The life and soul of all production is guaranteed quality. There are slogans in most factories stating defect reduction targets, but the ultimate aim should always be zero defects. The vital point to remember is that even if we only produce one defective product for every 10,000 produced, that item is still 100% defective to the person who buys it. Poka-yoke, or mistake proofing, is a vital factor in eliminating defects altogether.
Hello. Has it ever crossed your mind that factory production is very similar to creating music? Waste-free production is just like perfect harmony. In music, there are three basic elements: melody, rhythm, and harmony. Each of these elements can be considered beautiful in a skillfully played, well-composed piece of music. The same three elements of melody, rhythm, and harmony are also essential features in factory production. Let me explain. First, melody. The flow of items during processing can be regarded as the melody of production. This melody can take many forms: straight line flow, U-line flow, one item at a time flow, and also large lot flow. So melody is found in flow production. Second, how about the rhythm? This is represented by the pitch required for each product. It's expressed as the takt time of leveled production, which is the ideal cycle time. And the third element is harmony. In other words, an effective combination of different sounds. Of course, a poor combination leads to unpleasant disharmony. In production terms, harmony is represented by standard operations. They integrate people, machines, and materials into a seamless, harmonious whole in order to create products in an efficient way which is free from waste. As you can see, the same three basic elements of music are factors behind effective factory production. Flow production creates a melody. Leveled production establishes the rhythm. And standard work procedures build up production harmony. But what happens if something goes wrong? In the case of music, if the melody is unclear, the rhythm unstable, or the harmony off-key, then the result is not music, but noise. In the same way, good products cannot be produced in a factory where there is anything wrong with any of the three elements. Various types of waste are at the heart of failure to produce good products. And defective production is the most basic form of waste. Let's begin to consider just what kinds of waste lead to the production of defects. Materials. The first thing that many people think about is the cost of materials as a form of waste. It's true that materials costs can amount to a large percentage of overall waste. However, there are many other costs to be considered as well. Processing costs, for example, or costs of depreciation of equipment and facilities, repair costs, transportation costs, recall and replacement costs for defective products, and advertising costs, especially when there is a need to re-establish customer trust. Now let's look at ways to guarantee quality. There are 5 basic levels concerned with inspection and how errors and defects are regarded.
Level 1 is the most basic level. Whenever there is a lack of inspection, or it is not being fully practiced, defective products will inevitably leave the factory. There will be a constant need to recall defective products and replace them, which means that the company will naturally have bad business results. Endless defects lead to endless complaints. The logical countermeasure to achieve 0 defects at this level is simply to stop producing products altogether. That will certainly stop the production of defects. But it would be like cutting off your head to cure a cold. Level 2 is where defects are kept within the factory. One company which was tired of receiving complaints from customers about defective products developed the slogan, "Even if you produce defects, don't produce complaints." In other words, their countermeasure against the production of defects was to increase the number of inspectors to sort out good and bad products in order to prevent the bad ones from falling into the hands of customers. But although this may indeed be a way to reduce the number of customer complaints, it doesn't in any way prevent the output of defective products. It simply serves to reduce recall and replacement costs and avoid loss of customer trust. Level 3. We now move up to the level where everyone in the company is willing to tackle the problem of defects head-on. A concerted movement is required to counter the production of defective items, and a typical slogan would be, "If you produce a defect once, don't do it again." Rather than simply increasing the amount of product inspection, the key to achieving 0 defects lies in reinforcing improvement, i.e. The idea here is to provide the production workers with useful information on how to implement improvements which will prevent the production of defects. This is called improvement-oriented inspection. On to level 4. This is where efforts are made to eradicate defects at their source. This type of countermeasure can be expressed by the phrase, "Even if you produce a defect, don't let it get away." What this means in practice is that workers involved in processing must check and inspect themselves within their area of responsibility. In other words, all operators must also be trained as inspectors. This is known as autonomous or independent inspection. This kind of training, to establish all standard work procedures, is an essential part of the movement towards 0 defects. And so we come to the final level, where defects are not produced. But remember that if you persist with the kind of attitude that says, to err is human, and defects can never be completely eliminated, so zero defects is an impossible dream, you will never make it this far. The problem at many factories is that they simply increase the amount of inspection going on and erect barriers at the factory exit to prevent defective products being sent out. But this kind of approach is really based on a confusion between errors and defects. The difference is really quite simple. In factory production, errors are the cause and defects are the result. But unless this difference is fully understood, proper countermeasures to achieve zero defects cannot be made. A fundamental concept to be grasped in any production system is that although people can and do make mistakes, people don't have to produce defects. A typical slogan at this level would be, keep errors from resulting in defects. This concept can lead to the possibility of creating a system in which it becomes impossible for people to make mistakes. In other words, a mistake-proofing or Poka-yoke system. This concept is known as source inspection. It's a perfect means of achieving the 3 zeros: zero defects, zero waste, and zero delays.
So what level have you reached at your factory? You should, of course, be aiming to be at level 5. And as I said before, production without defects can be likened to a musical masterpiece. So now let's take a look at how we go about organizing a system to achieve zero defects. The daily work of any production site is based on 5 main elements. Operators receive work instructions and prepare the necessary parts and materials. Then they mount these on their equipment and start to produce items according to operational procedures. In other words, people receive information, mount the materials on the machines, and start processing using the standard methods. The cause of any defects will be found somewhere in those 5 elements: information, materials, machines, people, or methods. Let's take a look at each of them in turn in order to discover how defects originate.
Element 1, people. But it's not so easy to find defects during actual processing. That is because, generally speaking, every worker is trying to produce good products. And the secret is in the use of flow production and multiple processes. In flow production, each individual product is immediately used in the following process. And in multiple processes, in which each worker is responsible for more than one work process, the operator is in a perfect position to detect. Element 2, materials. Spot checking seems quite rational to those involved in production. However, as we've already noted, one defect in 10,000 is a 100% defect to the person who uses that product. And they don't care whether the defect originated in the original materials or parts, or in one of the processes. The ideal of zero defects can only effectively be reached by total inspection without involving huge numbers of inspectors. What this means is a change from spot checking, which is on the lookout for defects through random sampling, to total inspection, which is designed to prevent the production of defects. The second element in moving towards zero defects is therefore to include basic inspection techniques into the work process. One by one, or one at a time flow production, is the best way to ensure total quality during processing. Element 3, information. There are many ways in which information can be misunderstood. Errors can creep in when listening, when informing, when recording, or when reading. And the more the errors, the greater the number of defects. It's a basic rule of thumb that errors are most likely to creep in with verbal instructions. However, there can also be problems if all instructions are in the form of writing. So to avoid misunderstandings, the various techniques of visual control are important. They can transmit information quickly and clearly. Visual control is also very important in helping to point out defects at a glance. Element 4, methods. The means of production employed by a particular company can involve quite a complex situation, since production techniques often have a long and checkered history in tandem with the company's overall business policies. It's quite natural to find a certain resistance to changes which are designed to meet the demands of a new business and social environment. Production habits learned and digested many years ago are not usually very open to innovation. However, the base of all production should be the satisfaction derived from creating items of good quality and at a reasonable price, which fully meet the demands of the customer. Production can be based on two very different fundamental viewpoints. Product out, or product-based production, as exemplified by the large lot type of production which was so popular in the past, produces whatever suits the factory. On the other hand, market-in, or market-based production, concentrates production on meeting the needs and demands of the market. It's vital these days to switch to the market-in production viewpoint. Here again, there are two vital elements for success. First is flow production, to control defects and ensure they are moved and checked immediately at the downstream process. And second, standard operations, or standard work procedures, to avoid human errors. Element 5, machines. Of course, machines can produce defects. But as we've seen, most of the time defects are basically the result of human mistakes. Here again, it's important to use machines most effectively by switching from the concept of bulk production to that of production of only good products in the appropriate quantity. Measures to help us towards zero defects include ensuring that machines will cease to operate if they sense the possibility of producing defects, as well as a complete mistake-proofing system, whereby it becomes impossible to produce defects at all.
We've been looking at the basic causes of defects in the 5 main elements of the production process. Now, what stands out is the fact that people are closely connected to each element. Now, what that means is that people are the fundamental cause of all defects. The careless mistakes that everyone makes are known as poka-misu in Japanese. And the mistake-proofing system to avoid defects, even when we make those careless mistakes, is known as Poka-yoke. So now we're going to hear from a specialist in Poka-yoke, Hiroyuki Hirano, who has introduced the idea of mistake-proofing and zero defects to many companies in Japan, France, and the USA.
不良に関しては名人と達人、この2名の人が関わってきます。つまり不良というのは作った時に不良が内在化するわけです。それで今度は使った時にそれが顕在化するわけですね。ですから2名の名人と達人というのは、不良を作る名人というのは作業者自体なわけです。作業者が物を作った時に不良と分からず作っている場合が非常に多くあるわけですね。それと今度はその不良を見つける達人というのがいるわけです。達人というのはその不良品を使ってみて初めて顕在化して、それで不良品だと分かるわけですね。ですからこの名人と達人、この2名の方がですね、一緒になれば不良は出ない、こういう仕組みが出来上がるわけです。よく検査工程を充実して不良を食い止めるということがあるんですが、これでは実際はですね、クレームは止まっても不良は実際に出てるわけですね。ですから不良を根元からなくすには、どうしてもですね、名人と達人、不良を作る名人、見つける名人、達人、この2人をですね、一つにして考えるということが重要になってきます。そこで3つの原則があります。原則1、それは作らないことです。やはり物というのは作れば必ず不良が出る、こういう現象が出てくるわけですね。ですから不良をゼロにするには作らない、この姿勢が一番重要なんです。ですが一つも作らなかったらば工場としてやっていけません。ですからそこでお客さんが10必要だよと言ったら10以上は作る必要性はないわけです。必要なものを必要な時に必要なだけ作ればいいわけです。そこには仕組みとしてjust in time、 これとプルシステム、いわゆるお客さんが10必要だと言ったらその10に合わせて引っ張るような作り方をする仕組みとしては看板システムなどもいいでしょう。こういうふうな仕組みが非常に重要なわけです。第2の原則は、作る仕組みの中に使う仕組みを組み入れるということです。つまり使い勝手で作れということですね。不良というのは作った時に不良が発生している、内在しているわけです。ですからこれを見つける、つまり不良を見つける達人の気持ちで作らなければいかんということですね。そのためにはどうするか、つまり使い勝手の仕組みを作る方に仕組んでいくということが重要なわけです。そのためには仕組みとして何が必要か、人弁のついた自動化、特に不良の出ない仕組みの中の非常に重要なポイントであるポカよけ、これが最も大切になります。それともう一つは標準作業です。人、物、機械、この3つの要素で製品を作り上げていくわけですね。この中にいかに不良の出ない、ないしは不良の出さない仕組みの標準作業にしていくかということが非常に重要です。 原則の3は作る側に使う側の仕組みが組み入れられないときどうするかという問題が出てきます。この時は一時も早く使ってもらうというのが原則3です。それはものが一つずつ出来上がるんですが、これをロットにまとめたりせずに一つずつ後工程に作ったら流す、この仕組みが大切になるわけですね。これを流れ生産といい、その究極の姿を一個流しというわけです。この一個流しをすれば一つ不良を作って後工程ですぐに使って不良が顕在化するわけですね。そこで不良が仮に出たとしても1という単位で止まるわけです。ですからこの一個流れ生産、これを工場の中に仕組むことが大切です。それともう一つは何か、自分で作って自分で検査する、いわゆる多工程持ち、自主検査と言われるものが大切になってきます。いかがでしたか。不良を作る、これに対して不良の作れない仕組み、こういう3原則を述べてみました。もう一度確認してみましょう。原則1、作るな。原則2、使い勝手で作れ。原則3、一つずつ流して後工程で早く使ってもらえ。この3つの原則をぜひ守ってください。
Well, we hope you'll find the ideas in this first volume helpful in your own efforts to eliminate mistakes in the workplace. In volumes 2 and 3, we'll be looking at many concrete examples of mistake proofing, which will help us toward our goal of 0 defects. See you there.